Greetings and welcome to Smartwatch Tics. Today is going to be a fun day because we're going to do a detailed comparison between the No.1 D6 standalone Android-based smartwatch phone in rectangular shape and the FINOW Q1, again, Android standalone smartwatch phone in almost a square but slightly rectangular case. All right? We're going to take a look at the external comparisons of the two, then we're going to turn it on, and we're going to check out the innards. This is going to be rather lengthy because we're going to do a really detailed analysis. Let's begin, first of all, with the No.1. Here's the watch. It's in silver, this particular one. And you can see on the back we have the charging cradle and the diodes for doing your heart rate monitor. It's got a genuine leather strap. And it's got capacitive buttons down at the bottom. The strap is not removable, okay? And one button on the side. It uses this charging dock. Now, I'm going to ask you if you want to get a piece of paper and mark down the pros and cons of each, or at least keep them in your mind. There's some things that you want to know about. This is a really nice watch. But this is a drawback. If you see this charging adapter and you notice it's magnetically coupled with these two little magnets here. The way that works is it flips over and the connector just snaps in place like that. That's typically how they work. Some of them have cradles. These two have actually these little charging docks. The problem with this one is it's really flimsy. It's very easy to fall off. You cannot hold the watch. Sorry, FINOW. You cannot hold it by the cable alone. It's really weak. Now, No.1 says they are aware of this problem, and all they need to do is modify these magnets and make them larger because they're attaching to metal inside of here, and that would rectify the situation with a modified charging cradle. But for now, I would say this is really a drawback. It just doesn't stay on. And if you're trying to connect to your computer and transfer data, it's even more of a problem. Okay, quick look at the externals. Now, come here, Q1. Poor thing. All right, here's another interesting watch design. Again, it's different in bands. It's using a silicone band as opposed to the leather. All right. It's different in its case design. It's softer. You see that? It's not hard edges. It's more rounded. If you were to talk round for feminine and square for masculine, you might say that this is more male focus and that's female focus. But that would be stereotyping, and I don't want to go there. So it's preference. It's definitely different design. When we flip it over, we see that we have the charging dock on the side and the diodes for heart rate are right in the center, which was different than what we saw here. Notice the layout change. And when we look at the charging dock, okay, you can fall over for now too. You look at the charging dock for the FINOW Q1, and same kind of a concept, only this time you've got a really solid connection. It can almost hold the watch with the magnet itself. Now that means it's really strong enough that you can move it around and it's not really going to just fall right off in your hands. So good design on the charging cable here, and with a solid connection connected to your computer, you can do data transfers without worrying about the slightest touch causing a problem. All right, let's take some more deeper looks. You got the buttons on the side. You can kind of gauge the thickness of the two. I know you want to see them right side by side each other. It looks like, if I line up the bottoms here, that the FINOW watch is shorter by a little bit, a few millimeters, than the No.1 watch. It looks like it might be a little bit thicker, doesn't it? When you eyeball it, putting one on top of the other, which is going to make it strange in the camera. I can't really get it that way. So side by side, This has the rounded edges. This has almost a mirror finish and sharp, clean edges. And by now you've noticed that the No.1 has capacitive buttons across the bottom. These are active buttons when you turn it on, and the FINOW watch does not. That's a judgment call if that's something you want or something you don't. It adds a little bit of length to the watch, but it adds some capability as well. They're pretty much about the same size, but you really don't know until you see it on, right? I love this thing. Can you tell I'm into toys? It has inches and centimeters. We're going to do a centimeter check on my wrist. Okay, if I line it up at the bottom right about there, I'm coming in at, what, about 5.5 centimeters? You see that up there in the top? A little bit lower. Yeah, about 5.5 centimeters. So check your wrist. I'm a guy. I'm probably normal size, maybe slightly larger in the wrist, not sure. But close by. So when you put it on, I'm not going to go ahead and attach it, but this is what it would look like. For the more square FINOW Q1 watch. Softer, rounder corner edges. Overall smaller watch, but it doesn't look too huge on my arm. Definitely I'd say this is for the medium to smaller wrist. All right? Whereas the No.1 D6. There we go. The No.1 D6 looks like this. Still looks nice on this size of a wrist, right? It's got the defined edges. There you go. There's some interesting stuff going on inside. So I'm going to find the little opening point across from the charging pins. I can press and open the back of this watch. And on this one, we are in this corner, I believe. No. Okay. It's right above the pins on the band side without the buckle. You feel a little depression. And we can pop off the back of this one. Now we're going to get in here. One thing I'd like first to note is that on the FINOW watch, which is this one, the connection to the pins from the dock itself goes through a hole. You see that? There's a hole in the lid that the pins go through to connect inside the watch. That's a gaping place for water to come through. However, it doesn't mean you have double layers of pins to try to get your charging and signal to connect with the watch. You're going to have holes here on both of them for the laser diodes. These are not waterproof. In fact, they're challenging if you're sweating because the pins can get corroded just from your human sweat. So looking at whether you got big gaping holes or not just might mean how much faster water would flow into the watch. Personally, I think having the pins make direct contact with the mating pins on the watch through a hole is a lot better electronically than what you find in the No.1. The No.1 D6 watch has the pins right here that are attached to the watch, but in the case itself, you have mating pins that lead to another level of pins to which the dock actually attaches. The receptive magnets are in the case. So you see how easy it would be for No.1 to beef this up with bigger magnets and stronger magnets there too? Something I hope they're working on. This does not have the pass-through, so I'm touching pins, and those pins are touching pins there when the back is snapped on. Okay, while we have these open, let's talk about the batteries as well. The FINOW watch has a little battery in here. And again, this is a prototype. I know in their technical documentation, they say they'll be shipping with a 400 milliamp hour battery. This one clocks in at 360 milliamp in terms of what's written on the battery. But I imagine that they'll be honoring what you're going to see in their advertisement. But what I want to point out to you is that the battery is connected right here and is removable. It's a little connector that you can disconnect the battery and replace it with another one. The micro SIM card is just floating right below it. So it's really easy to pop the back off and change the battery on this watch, right? You just find that place, pry it open, lift it up, pull it out, put the new one in, and close it in. That's really nice design because it gives us infinite power. We talk about battery life, and that's all important, but as long as you could also replace the batteries. Now, granted, it's not as easy as just dropping one in that makes connections to pins. ZGPAX tried that with a S82 watch they produced, and it turned out it wasn't all that good because the snapping back with the movement of the watch, occasionally the battery would vibrate and disconnect, and the watch would pop off and have to completely reboot. So having a solid connector like that is a definite advantage, but it's a bit of a drawback in that you got to get used to opening that up, probably with a paper clip. In another video, we'll probably show you how to do that. Not today, though. We're doing a comparison, a quick comparison. Quick, move on. All right. The No.1 D6 has a little strap to pull the battery out. That's a nice advantage. It's a 450 milliamp battery rating. See that right there? Okay, I've blacked out my IMEI number. There's your nano SIM card. And just like on the FINOW watch, this one has a connector too. So the batteries can be removed on both watches easily and replaced just by simply snapping them out. And the backs go on equally easy. They line up. Make sure you got the right one on the right one, right? And just pop it in place. Snap, snap. You're good to go. And same thing here. Line the whole up. Snap, snap. And you're good to go on this one. So what do we got? We've got choice. We've got a little bit longer rectangular watch. We have a softer edged, more square watch. We have a leather band. We have a silicone band. And we have this charging cable conundrum. We have the laser diodes here on the No.1 watch, which is toward the edge, which means when it's on your wrist, you have to make sure you're sliding back and touching the screen to take your measurements so that the diodes are picking up your pulse, not hanging over the edge, because it is a longer watch, right? And they're on the center here. They both have one button, and they both are phenomenal. Let's turn them on and see what they do. Okay, they are in the off mode. I'm going to hit the power on both of them now. And they begin booting. Now, again, these are the first ones off the production line. So there's little anomalies and things that have probably been fixed and straightened out. For example, the FINOW logo is not yet on the Q1. I'm sure it will be on the one you get. There's some firmware updates happening. That's the music of No.1 coming in on this one. And as we go through this, just remember that yours may be slightly different. We're looking at the very first one, serial number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, that both companies have produced, which is really an honor to be able to evaluate these. The FINOW came up first. Now, again, they're fully loaded with software. There's the No.1 coming up. I've got a slider installed. Well, it'll take a little while for it all to load, but I have a slider that lets you adjust the brightness on both. They should be at 100%. I chose this watch face so that you can see on the watches that they are identical in the 320 by 320 configuration. And you have the capacitive buttons and a little bit longer watch on No.1's configuration. But the width looks like it's about the same margins around the edges, all that good stuff. So first thing I want to show you that's different between the two is what happens when you slide down from the watch face. The first time you slide down, it's the same. You get this little display. The second time, 1, 2, you get these different panels. The top shows you what you have turned on, Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. On the FINOW watch, you have control of your volume and your brightness right here, and a box for Do Not Disturb. So right away on this one, if you're going into a movie theater or something and you want to dim it down and silence it, you can do it very quickly just by pulling the top down, and you get into this panel. On the No.1, you have different options. You still have brightness, but in sets of 3 different levels. And you have some button options. This is where you can turn on or off the flip bright screen. That's the phraseology for having the watch on your wrist and then just twisting your wrist, and it will go on for a few seconds and then turn off automatically. There's the Do Not Disturb. And this one has an added option that allows you, by putting a check mark here, to disconnect from your network whenever the screen goes off. A nice feature. You have that unchecked if you're going to be using it around your router to read the news or stream music or whatever, so that if the screen goes off, it'll still stay connected. But if you put a check mark on there, then it will turn off or disconnect your network when it's dark, and that will give you longer battery life. So we want to turn this one on because we're going to demo that for you later. We don't have that option there. So how do you get the option for flip the bright screen on the FINOW watch? Well, you have to slide up to go into your apps. You go into settings. You go down to, that's something else we'll be showing you later. Came up automatically, sorry about that. Power savings. And here is where you have open flip brightness screen. Okay. Different layout. FINOW is taking the approach that you're going to set it and forget it. You're going to use it that way all the time pretty much, so it's buried in settings. They figure your volume and your brightness are more important, and that's what they put at the top. And No.1, differently. The volume is handled, of course, through the settings. We'll show you that, but they put this option right up at the top. Let's go there. We slide it up to get to our icons. We go into settings. This time we go into sound. And here's where you have the individual volume adjustments for each of the volumes. Okay, that's where you see a lot of this in the other videos we do, where we do a deeper review. We did a first look on both of them and a full review. I'm not going to go through all of this. I'm just showing you the differences that you find. Notice to get back, I got to slide down. This is the menu. Oh, same thing. I got to slide. Or on this one, I got the capacitive buttons. I can go back one level that way, or I can go all the way to the top that way with those 3 buttons. Some of the differences that you see within here. And there's a couple of more differences between the 2 watches. The FINOW Q1 has all of the clock skins or watch faces that you see on the No.1 D6, plus this one. It's like an animated butterfly flying. And that's interesting because that's showing another level of control with the clock engine, I guess, that lets you do animation. But basically, the other clock skins are the same ones, that you'll find on both watches, which means they're basically coming from the same source. All right, this is the typical implementation of a round watch face within the square container. And so it makes it look smaller than it would on a round watch. So you're going to find that most of the clock faces that work well on this kind of a watch are not going to be the round typical watches you see on a round watch. They're going to be modified somewhat, something like let's say this, right? Or perhaps, well, we saw that one. There's that same one. How about that? You see how they've expanded it to take advantage of the edges, and it's not round anymore. So those are built-in clock faces, and our developers, of course, have been doing development on clock skins that result in watch faces that you've seen lots of here on our Smartwatch Ticks channel. And some of those are pretty well fitted for the square watches. So we're going to put together a compilation of watch faces that play well on the square watch and offer those up to you here shortly too. Okay, some other differences between the two. Well, let me show you this. On the Q1, when you go into the apps, they're all sorted in a particular way that is kind of haphazard, if you ask me. They're not alphabetical. The installed ones seem to be the first ones in the list, and after that you add apps and they just show up. So if you're looking for something in particular, you have a hard time finding it. It's like, where is it? Like screen filter. I touch that and it dims the screen, and touch it again and it brightens it. Great for battery saving. You could do something like this. Click, touch, and drag it to the top. Now this is new. This is in, I guess, Android 5.1. It lets you change the order of the apps that you have installed simply by touching and dragging. That is on the Q1. The No.1 D6 has larger icons. Don't fall. You see how they're a little bit larger? And at this point in time, when you touch and hold, they're not moving yet. However, I have watched a video from No.1 where they are doing a firmware update for this watch. So by the time you get it, hopefully, it's going to have exactly the same feature. Press and hold, and then drag the icon anywhere you want and reorder these. So right now, it's available on the Q1. It will be available through a firmware update on the D6. So those will be identical, except the icons are a little larger on the D6. Something that's really different, though, that you're not going to find on the Q1 at all, is this button here. Now, we talked about how these buttons work. This one takes you back one level, and this one takes you home, which we're already at. But we haven't showed you this one. When you tap this one, you get two options. One is managing apps, and the other is system settings. When you touch system settings, that's exactly the same thing you get when you go into settings on both watches. And if you look at them, they're laid out the same. Oh goodness, I must have jumped way into it. We're just scrolling. Messages, calls. Oh, stop this. Behave. Settings. Power savings, battery. Uninstall apps, privacy lock. This is very sensitive. Reset equipment. About equipment. Oh, you notice the developer options is on this one and not on this one? Let me show you a trick. It wasn't on this one either, and it's not on any of your Android devices normally, but you can activate it, and you want developer options to be active so that you can go down and click on stay awake when it's plugged in. That way, if you want to have it on at night, for example, as a night light, and dim it down and see your watch, you could do that. But you have to have access to developer options. So to get it, you go into the About Equipment, and you come down here to where it says the build number. This is any Android device, and you just start tapping on it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now see, you're 3 steps away from being a developer. 5, 6, 7. You are now a developer. So I am now a developer. When I leave here, now I have developer options. If I go into developer options, which is on, and make sure stay awake is checked, that it'll never sleep while charging, I'm in business on both watches. So that's not a difference between them. It's just that I had done it here and I hadn't done it there. So it's great. I got a chance to show you how to do it. What is different, and this is really significant, if you remember when you go in here, to deal with your applications, you only had one thing called uninstall. That's it on both of them in the settings. Oh, very sensitive today. Okay. Uninstall. Loading all the apps. I have a lot more apps in here than I have in here so far, but there they all are. Okay, and then it asks you, do you want to uninstall? And I don't, so I'm going to cancel that. Okay, so that's what happens when you click System Settings, is you go into the same thing as if you had touched that icon for System Settings. What's really nice about this one, but not so critical that you couldn't do it on this one, is when you hit the Managing Apps. When you tap that, you get into the really deep display that lets you go through and look at all of your installed apps, your running apps, and even your disabled apps. Okay? That is actually available if you install the application, and we've talked about this before, called Settings Search, which looks like this. When you go into Settings Search, it's a little bright, huh? There we go. And you go down to Applications, you get to that same display. So I can do it on either watch. I can do it with Settings Search. And we're in the same basic part of the system settings. It's just that it's really convenient here on the D6. That's from app management, if you need to delete apps or clear the memory in them or something. If you don't need to do any of that stuff, there is still one really nice advantage to having all of this. Again, I can go back, and I'm at the clock face. If you're here, and you tap here, and you tap here, and you tap there on display, and you tap there, you can quickly change your sleep time. Quickly, he says? Wait a minute. What was that? Tap here. Tap here. That's 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 taps to just change this display? Yeah, but without that button to do that, you have to swipe and then scroll to find where settings is and then go in and nail it that way. So it's a little bit faster. That appears to be the only thing this button does in all modes, is bring up that selection. Maybe it doesn't do it when you're in it. I guess it doesn't. Of these two options, it doesn't do anything specific when you're in apps, but it always seems to be bringing these things up so you can get into your system or manage your apps. Wow, we've covered a lot. Well, how do they perform? How do they really rack up against each other and against the whole class of watches? Let's check it out. Going to go all the way down to the 2 benchmark. I noticed that on the No.1, it doesn't scroll until you get a really good swipe at it. And 2 benchmark. Okay, I ran this once already, and I got 18,465, 18,777. Really good reviews, really good performance for this class of watch. This one seems to be a bit bright. Let's dim that so you can see it. You see how now I have this slide control for the brightness that I can adjust it. This one may be a bit bright too. There, okay. And let's test it again. And go. So it's going to take a while to run this test. I'm going to play it out, of course, but I'm going to edit out most of the middle of this. So I will be back as it's wrapping up, and then we'll see which one finishes first. Okay, there we go. Looks like the number one finished slightly ahead in terms of doing the test, but I mean, the numbers, you can't get much closer than that. 18,598, 18,590. So I'd say they're basically the same watch, but to confirm that, let's take a look at the info pane. Okay, let's take a look at the information now. Here we go with the basic, and we have a screen resolution of 320 by 320 on both of them. I'm going to skip over my IMEI information, go straight to storage then. Now, again, this is a prototype on both of them. The number one shipped with a total of 8 gigabytes of memory. The FINOW shipped me with a 2.2 gigabyte memory. Checked in with some people that have received their FINOW Q1s, and they are also getting 8 gigabytes in their shipped model. So this is just a sample model. The memory is supposedly full up to the same capacity as it is on the number one watch as well. They're clocking out. They have the same cores. They have basically the same processor. Sorry about the reflections. It's black and mostly background, so hard to not have reflections on here. Here's our display information. It says 120 DPI 320 by 320. The operating system is Android 5.1. Now we're going to get into some juicy stuff. Here's the kernel information. Is that in sharpness? There we go. Network. And we're on Wi-Fi. Sensors. This is interesting. What sensors do we have? See if you see any differences between them. They all seem to be so far, the same. Where's gyroscope? There we go. You can see which ones are not supported and which ones are. Oh, hello. There we go. Linear acceleration. Those of you who aren't interested in this is YouTube after all. You can just zoom right past it and pick back up when we're done. Orientation. And that's it. This is a deep comparison of the two watches. They really are both awesome pieces of equipment. And the choice is yours when you boil it down to whether you really want the band being silicone or leather, whether you want the rectangular, sharp-edged, little bit larger, or softer, rounded edge, more square display. They're both great watches. This is from FINOW. This is from number one. They both support SIM cards. They both do limited tethering to phones. They cannot make or receive phone calls directly from the watch. You can't really answer your social media stuff with the keyboard or any of those good things. They're not tethering watches. They're standalone watches. And they're identical in that regard. So there you go. The detailed comparison of the two watches It's up to you which one you like. Check out the colors, see what they're available in. These are both silver. There's obviously black, and there may be, either now or coming, a gold version as well. You've been watching Smartwatch Ticks. If you're not on our channel directly, go to youtube.com/smartwatchticks or hit the little YouTube button in the lower right-hand corner of this video, and that'll take you right over to our channel. In there, you'll find information directly underneath each of these videos that may be important to you, and of course, commentary of people leaving questions and getting answers. Well, obviously, if you are watching and have finished this video, you must be interested in the square, rectangular-sized Android smartwatch. So for you, a special treat. Tacking on to the end of this video is a romp through square-like watch faces that work well on this square design. Rather than being the little circle within a square, which I put this one in as kind of a reference, so you get an idea. The eyeballs telling the time somewhere here, what about 4:13 or so in the afternoon? Well, I can't tell if it's afternoon or morning, but it is afternoon. Anyway, that's how a round watch face would look on a larger square watch, kind of reduced. So we want to fill that square as much as possible. So I'm going to gallivant through on both these watches a series of watch faces that you can take a look at. The good news is I'm going to have a zip file with all of these at the bottom of the video. If you're on the actual channel, youtube.com/smartwatchticks, and look below the video in the notes section, download that zip file, and you'll get each and every one of these clock faces that you can install directly on your square watch. Yeah, they'll work on the round watch. Actually, they were designed for the round watch before the square watch ever came out. It just so happens that they work nicely on the square watch. Here you have the power and the date down below. Here it's remodified with it on the side, but basically similar type face. Since we're looking at the same thing on both watches, I'm just going to skip past so we can go through them all. Large digits that scroll and spread past the square, bigger than life. It's sort of a round one, but only because the second hand going, so it more or less fits that big profile, especially if you take it into color, like that, or you play with it. Come back here. Like this. Yeah. Do a few more modifications to that same design. You got your weather, you got your power, you got all these different things. All of these are there, and if you've been studying how to modify clock skins, well, you can take any of these and mess around with them yourself, contour them to fit your needs. Here's a large digit type of a watch again. Here's one that looks like a thumbprint, like it's a security thing with a set of hands on it. That's an interesting design as well. All of these work in the full screen mode. That one doesn't quite work right. There's a little glitch in the layering or the images, but it works enough and nice enough that it was worthy of going ahead and putting it on there. Here's a big rectangular one about Charlie Chaplin, and it's animated. You see that? I like this one. I come from the old MS-DOS world, precursor to Windows. And if you remember, this is what you had, your C prompt. You type in time, hit return, date, but you didn't have battery, but we do now. All I got to do is play with that and make it green, like the old original green monitors, and wow, it'd be in business. That's super. Brings back fond memories. Here's that one, and here's a modification. So you see we have this kind of gray background you see on there. It's pretty dim. And one of them's in color, one of them's in black and white. That's the difference, I believe, on the layout of these two skins. Okay, this one's interesting. Really designed for a round watch, but it plays nicely on a square watch, I think. Here it is, kind of a different mod of the same sort of thing. The upper half is sort of for round, the bottom half is obviously flat and square. Different mood, different impression. That's what clock skins are about. So you can use this one watch to have a whole variety of different effects. Now we're getting back sort of to that round watch concept in these, but I put them in because they actually extend beyond the edges. You can see that there's stuff right to the peripheral. Perhaps if I brighten it a little bit, you can see all of that in both of these. Now we're into a different kind of a clock face. It is round, but it's got more, so it made the cut. I don't know what criteria I used. It just kind of kept changing, but it showed up like these, and they seem to be nice on a square watch. I guess that was the main thing. I'd sit back and look at it and say, what does it look like? Does it look good? Okay, the last of the sort of round, funny-looking kind of things here. It goes off the screen. You wouldn't see that on a round watch, but you do see it on a square watch, and it wasn't designed that way, which is, I mean, it wasn't meant to be seen. It just happened. So that's pretty cool. The numbers kind of get lost going around the edge, but I like the way it just like flows over to the button. Something's, yeah, that one's a nice one. Well, now we move into the world of panoramas, and these are panoramic scenes that emulate kind of standing and going around in a circle. Nowadays, with virtual reality taking off the way it is, we're missing the clouds on that one. It's a little bright. Bring it down some. There you go. Same creator put these together. One of them looks like the big world curved this way. The other one is more like you're in a bowl looking up, but you've got virtual reality contours. Here's an interesting one too, with an antenna. That goes once around, I guess, every minute, and you don't see it very often, but it's kind of cool when it comes by. It's got the steps on this one. That's got the date and day. I mean, all those are modifiable, so you can work with the background that's already been designed and play with what you'd like on the layout. And yes, we have videos on how to do all of that stuff. So, now we get into this one, which is good for like in a movie theater or something. It's dark. So is that. They're sort of the round concept, but they're different than your regular clock outline. So you have circles within circles. This you can actually read the date and time. Here you just have to figure it out. 4/18. Which one's which, right? And that's a wild and crazy one. And so is that one. These are mauve. These are Art Deco. You give it a name. Anyway, they made the cut and they're on these square watches. All of these watch faces, here it is with the date added to it, and a lot of other goodies down there. Plain, vanilla, chocolate, whatever you want to call them. The developer made a bunch of these with different backgrounds, but for me, the black and white gray was an Ansel Adams kind of a feel to it. It was nicer than with all the color backgrounds. So those are the ones I put on here. All the rest are available. If you go to the G Plus community that's set up for all of this, they have a whole area of clock skins that have been designed, and these are them. I'll have the link to that, of course, at the bottom of the video. I'm going to flop over here to show you the piece of paper. I really like this one. It's like a folded piece of paper. This one has the time, the month, weather, and the day of the week with the day down here. This one's modified, added seconds down. Can you see that in the corner there? Under the edge of the piece of paper. Right there, ticking off. And the day and date are over here, and the power and day of the week are there. This is a modification I did taking the original. So it's pretty easy to do. I didn't really need the weather. Kick that off, but I wanted to add the seconds. Actually, someone requested this modified with seconds, and I like the power. So there you go. That's keeping my finger in the developer pie. I like to kind of stay on top of that. That's hand coding, by the way, not using the computer program or anything, which makes it even tougher, like riding a bicycle instead of hopping on a moped. Okay, a few more. This is a clock skin with kind of a picture of the universe in the background. Really hard to get just right for the camera because it has gradients from very bright to very dark. This one made for a round watch. You can tell from the writing, but nonetheless, it's got that rectangular feel that it's all right on a square watch. Oh, here we go. Let's pump the volume up on that. Pump up the volume. Oh no, where's my volume? There we go. My visual volume. And there. Okay. Completely different feel, isn't it? Yeah. What are you going for? There's I think some of these that you're starting to see are available for download directly from the watch as well. From the link that they've got to their web server, and then they've been extracted and modified and reposted, and that's that. This is amazing. I talk about that one a lot. You've seen it before. That's the cube telling time, and this is the cuckoo clock telling time. And both of these are unique in that they're impossible. The clock engine doesn't support what you're looking at. Nonetheless, here it is. The pendulum effect, I got a video up that reveals the secret behind that pendulum going back and forth, which there is no code that you can write to make an object go back and forth like that. This one, well, there's no code that you can make to have the letters in these positions. It's just impossible. You can only put the letters, horizontally, just like a regular typewriter or something. But nonetheless, here they are, done with very creative, talented folks. Andrew Davis did both of these. And here's something that's flipping around. I mean, it could be just a flat, vanilla, plain old watch skin, but it's not, because there's a little shadowing effect going on with it, that the stuff around the periphery just appears occasionally. That's a nice eye catcher when you're walking around. If you have it on, set for a long time out, you get that kind of an effect. Nice. Now this one, I got to really play with the volume on that. Do you see what we got going on here? First of all, we've got the illusion of water going uphill and falling downhill, and the wheels turning, and the water's falling, and the clock's telling the time. Very creative watch face. Another one of those out of the inspiration of Andrew Davis. Again, these guys are available over on the G Plus community that's set up specifically for these clock skins. From 2001, the Space Odyssey, the computer HAL, in all of its, look at it, dim down and brighten up, all of its regalia there. I get spooky just looking at that thing, thinking, and this is way before the internet or Google or Edward Snowden or anything. Hal was out there with a couple of guys in space. Spooky movie if you haven't seen it yet. This is a hodgepodge just put together of a variety of stuff. They're both round, aren't they? But they're not like a regular clock. So, yeah, I think they look pretty cool. It's like, that just looks really cool. So they made the cut. You can dump them if you want. If they don't fit your inspiration of what you want on a watch, then that's okay. Just pick what you like. And for everybody in the working world, clocking in, see the time clock on the side? Isn't that just perfect? The rat race. Yeah. Of course, the clock is telling the battery percentage, if you can see it. And the time's up at the top. And everything goes. Look at the cage going around. The feet. The little gear up in the corner. Andrew outdoes himself with these. Harley! Gotta have a Harley watch. Now that looks like, whoa, on this rectangular one. Doesn't that just fit? My goodness. I get more excited about these clock skins that the developers put together, I think, than I do about the watches themselves. Because every morning I get up, I get to check and see what folks did during the night. Because they're all over. We got folks in Australia and Europe, the United States, Canada, you name it. They're there, and they're developing, and they're posting. And you get all these good concepts. No idea what this is. It looks sort of like an octopus, but I'm not sure if it's alive or not. All I know is it tells the time. Wow, that one's wild. This one you got to pump up the volume a bit to get that flashing effect in it, but maybe not too much. I tell you, that control for changing the brightness right on the edge of the screen is one of the best gifts a developer has ever given the community, especially for watches. It really, really works. Very, very handy. And kind of a play on Android Wear, where the bottom's usually cut off. Well, we've got information here, right? Okay, there's a dim combination lock kind of thing. And if I can get this over here, I'll tell you one thing I've noticed. The No.1 D6 screen is more sensitive and harder to swipe on. It's like a little sticky. I don't know if it's the glass. I've cleaned it. I don't know if it's just I'm pressing too hard, but I have a bit more of a difficult time moving on that one than I do on this one, or any of the round ones. Just what I'm noticing. There you go. It's kind of a combination where the time is shown on these little levers. Okay, and if we play with this one, we can get into the Nixie tube set. Here you go with the basic Nixie tube, and here it is with the seconds, a little modification on the same theme. But if you throw bells and whistles and jazz in there, you can get a lightning bolt going up the center. You can get the battery power up at the top. And of course you can get the date down at the bottom. There we go. Nice when it's taken out to another level. The gears turning at the bottom. A lot of fine detail. You can actually see the time pretty good. I'm just having a hard time getting it to the right brightness. There you go. See all the activity going on in there? Nice. Now, some of these work well outdoors, but not many. Most of them are really for indoor use. This is going to take a little while to load because that's a panoramic view, as if you were standing in one place and the world was spinning around you. And every minute, it inches just a tiny bit more. We're going to do a video about panoramas. You've seen a few of them earlier. This will take a whole day, 24 hours, to go all the way around for you to see the picture. So you got to be patient. But it is pretty darn cool, the panorama. I think we have another one in here later, too, that's similar to that. There's a radar and the robot. You see they're going alphabetically. Again, Andrew Davis on these. That's a little robot, obviously, with a little rocket going around and the time. We've done that on other videos with the eyes and the antennas flashing. Works on a square watch and it works on a round watch. This one is a very interesting radar because it actually tells the time in the screen. It's fun. And there we go. It's 4:29. Now it's 4:30. It just hit 4:30. The seconds are ticking off up there. You have no idea how complex this is to be able to show the time at the correct position on 3 different rings going around a radar loop. A lot of interesting code there. If you want to study code and how to make this stuff work, download some of these elaborate ones like that cube and like this one, and just look into them and study them. Here's another one of those like we had before for telling the time that rotates around with the arrows showing the hour and minute and second. And not to be outdone, here's the same concept, but now the hands turn and the pointers stay at the top, like a combination lock, okay? Here the pointers move, here the hands move. Whoops. It's round, but it works well on this platform. This is, you got to look carefully, but there's actually falling leaves in this one with a little cricket on top of the time, like cherry blossoms. This is an early attempt at making snow or leaves or things fall, and they're kind of jiggly because they're going down like every second. But it's an iterative process, learning the design of how to do this. That leads to something like this. It changes every second as well. This is playing Space Invader. Look at this. Pretty cool, huh? That, of course, works on a square watch. We come up to this one. This is Stealth. It's a nice, just basic black and white watch. This I like because the numbers are like way out around the edge. It doesn't feel so much like a circle as a lot of them do that are contracted. That one's much, much broader. And a modification of it has this image in there. Same watch, just a different background. Okay, here's another fun one. This is another one, Impossible. Andrew Somers has done this one. There's the date at the top and the time in hours, minutes, and seconds. But the last two digits, tenths and hundredths of a second, there's no code to do that. It's not possible. But here it is, nonetheless. Again, if you dissect this and look at how he's doing this with rotating wheels and masks to flash the numbers at just the right moment. I wonder if I could do that. No, it doesn't quite work. But that's what he's doing. He's doing something like that makes these digits appear. It's not a stopwatch. Now, that would be really something, but we can't get into the code that allows us to make it into a stopwatch. But he's got that thing running like that. Isn't that trippy? This is green just like that. It's just a little brighter. That's the problem with the camera. They're identical. It's the right lighting will change the effect. Okay, let's move on to a few more. This is like a little twirling whirlwind, which is kind of fun. And here's similar to the twirling whirlwind, but instead we've got the Star Trek craft rotating around in hours, minutes, and seconds with the battery percentage. This is a nice, simple, elegant, go out on the town, sip some wine, I don't know, whatever your vision is. I guess you could like paint a story about what each of these faces would be appropriate for. For me, they're just appropriate to have on the watch to choose from and to show you guys. All of these will be packaged in the complete Zip Connect collection so that you can download them, install them, and play with them. This is one of my favorites, of course, fabulous Smartwatch ticks, it says at the top. Dim that down. It says welcome to, but that's cut off. Fabulous Smartwatch ticks. There's the time and the date down at the bottom. This is a record player. Can you tell? It's slower than 33 RPM. It's like 1/60th RPM. Here's another panorama that is different, again, from what you saw before, and it has the addition of an airplane that comes flying by. These are the kind you need to put on and just let them run to get the full experience. Oh, and yes, they are synchronized, so if you had them on two watches, it's as good as Mickey Mouse kicking his heels on somebody else's smartwatch that was so proud of him. Look at this. They're synchronized right exactly together. So if you both got smartwatches of any of these kind, a round one, a square one, big, little, and you both have that clock face on them, and you're out and about, and you just hold them side by side, you could definitely impress people that you know where you are and what you're doing, because they'll be in sync. And this is that other panoramic one we were talking about. These are all sorted alphabetically in here now, and that's why they're a little out of order and not grouped together. Again, Andrew Somers, he designed it for the round watch, so he put his signature off screen. So if you moved it a little bit, you'd see his name if you saw, it's showing up. And lo and behold, square watches come out, and now he's just right out there. And good for him. This is great. This is Belgrade, from a request from a viewer. And he pulled these different images off of the internet, and just like the other one, in 24 hours, it will loop all the way around. This gray circle was because he had it set to show dimmer picture depending on the weather conditions. If it was cloudy outside, it would dim down by putting a gray haze over it. If it's sunny, it would be clear. So right now it's reporting cloudy on these watches, which is why you see the circle. Ingenious, an effect of trying to kind of manipulate a little bit the background based on the weather. And finally, we introduce you to Zolar the Magnificent, and yet another amazing watch at 4:37 in the afternoon, where questions can be asked and answers will be presented down at the bottom in synchronization. This is a watch face. The inventors of the code to do this never imagined that it would be taken in directions like this, but nonetheless, here it is. So, the No.1 D6 Square Android 5.1 smartwatch, the FINOW Q1 Square Android 5.1 smartwatch, both of them magnificent, both of them supportive of these clock skins, and both of them, whichever you choose, will be able to load these up. Thank you for watching Smartwatch Ticks. We've got a lot more coming because there's going to be a lot more watches in the future. What a time to be doing this. We'll see you all later.